All right, I'm going to call this meeting of the Personnel and Animal Welfare Committee to order. And we are going to begin with general public comment and items number 1 and 6, all by Ms. Ramirez. So if you'd like to come up, you have 3 minutes. And for the record, we are beginning with myself and Mr. Price. So we have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Chair Koretz. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start with my public comments. First of all, I'm again admonishing the city. I've got problems here as a person of gang stalking. I get a lot of city employees gang stalking me everywhere I go. It pisses me off. Just because I make my public comments, that's my business. I have every right to say what I want to say. I don't go to people and say, I'm going to kick your ass, bitch, because I don't like what you said. I don't say crap like that. I don't stalk people because I disagree with them. If anything, I believe in the Socratic method, and that is the exchange of free-flowing ideas, whether I like them or not. That's a civilized person. I'd like to think I am one, because I don't fight. I don't believe a lady should fight. And thank you, grandmother, for teaching me that. And second of all, I am disgusted with Antonio Villaraigosa, the pussy, because he was a gangbanger and a mayor, of course, and you've got a lot of gangbangers who work in the city. I hope we filter them out, weed them out. That means a lot of your Chango Latino gangbangers and wetbacks who should be working in the city. We want them out. You've got too many of them who are just sitting here, breathing airspace, and they're not participating, they're not helping, they're nothing more than members of the gangs. And that's why you have waste, fraud, and abuse. Get them out.
Time left if you could speak to items number 1 and 6.
Okay. And number 1, Department of Recreation and Parks. You have a deplorable department. You need to overhaul the department. Now, we've got a wonderful, beautiful park, the Music Center Grand Park. It's beautiful. Architecture by Mr. Gary did a beautiful, phenomenal job in that landscape, the outlay, the design, beautiful. The problem is you've got a lot of crime, violence, vandalism, graffiti, rape in both bathrooms, Block 1 and Block 4 of the Music Center Grand Park. We need to correct that. And I know that you've got a position here for Chief Management Analyst, but you really do need, before you hire anybody else, you need to overhaul the entire department. They need to clean up all the parks, not just the Music Center Grand Park, but you need to clean up all the parks. They are drug and gang infested. People don't feel safe anymore. You can't lay down without being robbed, attacked, or raped, or beaten. You can't. The children need a park. Children need a park. We need to start cleaning up these parks, all of them. Start firing every idiot and hire military veterans, hire people who are competent, who have the balls to say, let's go to the park and clean up and drive out all those gangbangers, wetbacks, and all the other demons. Get them out. And number 6, fiscal year, you don't deserve 1 penny. No, we have urban area securities. We have no security. We have no public safety. The mayor, city attorney, and all of you have done a lousy job. Crime is up, and you have lied on your data. You falsified the information. It is not safe in America. It isn't safe in Los Angeles. It isn't safe anywhere. Please, you don't deserve a penny. God bless America, and God bless Donald Trump.
Okay, it looks like, do we have any other public speakers? Looks like not, so that will close public comment and general public comment. I'd like to ask that we move item 1 and 3 on consent, unless there's any objection. Hearing none, those items are approved. And if we could hear item number 2.
Item 2, Information Technology Oversight Committee report relative to the Human Resources and Payroll Project and related matters. This matter has also been referred to the Information Technology and General Services Committee.
Good afternoon. I'm Trina Odziker with the Office of the CAO. The Information Technology Oversight Committee considered an ITA report regarding the status of the Human Resources and Payroll Project on March 5th. And ITA had an opportunity to present their report, which was dated February 28th. ITAC recommended that the report be forwarded to Council and noted and filed, and now it is in your committee. The ITA report is attached to the ITAC transmittal that's before you. It highlights a number of issues relative to the HRP project, and they include the following: a general overview of the HRP project, a brief discussion of the Hrp Rfp Objectives, which includes a timeline and a number of responses received to the Hrp RFP, the details regarding the response evaluation process, including the members of the evaluation team, the multiple tiers of review that include administrative compliance, the payroll solution description, videos showing features of the proposed solutions, and the proposed ability to meet the city's technical requirements for this HRP project. A discussion of the potential cost range, the estimated schedule of the project from planning and requirements gathering to the HRP system development, and then some potential issues and risks that are associated with the project. So we have a number of folks available from ITA, from the Controller's Office, and from personnel to be able to answer questions, and I'd be happy to do so as well.
Thank you. Wonder if you or someone else from ITA could answer what a Tier 3 specific reference check is. That was referenced.
Absolutely. Ted Ross, General Manager with the ITA. So as a part of this process, being the largest employer in the city of Los Angeles, it's extremely important for us to have a modern, robust, cost-effective system. We approached this with three tiers. Tier 1 was to determine the vendor's experience and their capability, their expertise to be able to deliver the project. Tier 2 is which we evaluated all the different requirements, and the vendors would demonstrate their ability to meet those requirements and how they would do it. And Tier 3 was a little extra sizzle. It was the in-person interview where they provided demonstration, but we also provided them various scenarios. So each vendor had 2 weeks to basically run a payroll using their system. So the Tier 3, the Tier 3 specifics would be for each of them to be able to demonstrate what their system could do and how they would handle it, being that there was always an open concern that since we have a very customized system, they wouldn't be able to handle it with off the shelf.
And how do you think that turned out?
I thought it turned out quite well. And so I think the vendors themselves, and you always are watchful for vendors because they'll say anything, right? The vendors themselves actually were complimentary of the city evaluation team because we ran each of them through their paces. That Tier 3 evaluation process is actually quite unique. It's where we said, listen, here's some easy, medium, and difficult challenges that we currently do today in the payroll system. How would your system do that? And by giving every vendor exactly 2 weeks to show it, it gave them a short but still comprehensive enough time to be able to demonstrate that their system can do it and for them to show how they did it. It helps be able to answer some of the questions from the city workforce to say, hey, these systems that are out there, we hear a lot of great things, but are we too complex? Are we too difficult? And I think generally speaking, the vendors were able to step up to the challenge.
So we didn't think we lose anything dramatic by not having a customized system the way we do now.
I wouldn't want to speak for our evaluation team, but I think that a general consensus coming out of it where they were very impressed with the modern solutions that are available. And I think to some extent the city asking ourselves the questions of, why have we waited so long?
And are any of the proprietary departments currently using Pacer? And if not, why not? And will they be looking at it for this new system?
One of the difficulties we encounter, so the 2 of the 3 proprietary departments, they use Pacer to an extent. So they receive paychecks coming from downtown, et cetera, and so they have interfaces in and out. One of the complexities we have is, take, for example, airports. They use an SAP system for the time entry and some of those aspects. So they end up sending us information that we process that we end up sending back. So certainly in that capacity, they will be utilizing it. One of they're looking very closely at the solution that we choose, but one of the complexities they have within their own organizations is they need to integrate with some of their other systems. So we have a financial system separate from their financial system. They tend to even use different bases of accounting. They'll use proprietary accounting while we use government fund-based accounting. So I think that's sort of created a hesitance in the past, but they're looking very closely at the product that we select, and they've actually been asking a lot of questions to gain insight because I think many of them need to modernize themselves.
Okay, and one last question for me. So the council is going to be considering a CAO report relative to vacancy reporting using the Pacer system that we have now. How will that fit in with the newer system?
Based on the demonstrations that I observed, and I certainly am open for personnel and controller and others if they wanted to weigh in on it. Based on the difference that I observed, we found to be, from the IT perspective, considerably better reporting tools and reporting capabilities out of the systems that were being proposed. So we're not just here to replace a payroll system. We're here to modernize the way we run HR as well as the way we process payroll. And these newer systems have dramatically better, from my perspective, dramatically better capabilities when it comes to reporting.
Very good. Mr. Price?
Thank you. Thank you for the report and for the progress that we're making in sort of streamlining and making the system more responsive to us. But I'm curious, what factors were discovered by KPMG in the risk analysis that they performed that found that the pay SR system was unacceptable?
Certainly. When I first came into ITA in 2012, one of my top priorities had to do with resolving the PACER question. It is a custom-built system, built from scratch, which is extremely rare in the world.
It was built in-house?
It was built by a vendor. It's from Bob Hess and Associates. It launched in the year 2000. It replicated a lot of the capabilities of the legacy system going back to the 1980s, and so it was a modernized version of a 1970s, 80s system. And for its strength is that it was able to accomplish payroll functions where sometimes in the past we were unable to with some of the other systems. But certainly in its weaknesses, it was a system that was completely custom built. It means it requires heavily the vendor himself to be able to provide much of the maintenance. That vendor has retired as of November of this last year. It is a system that is very difficult to make adjustments and changes in because it's million-plus lines of code. It's a system that doesn't upgrade very easily. So we actually run into issues where it's stuck on older versions of servers and older versions of software, which creates things like cybersecurity issues. It's a system that doesn't have some of the modern capabilities, your ability to use it off a smartphone and these other kinds of aspects. So it has a system that's been able to serve us well in the sense of reliably processing payroll, and that is a primary function that we certainly give it credit for. But it's a system that its days were numbered, and we knew it back in 2012. So we're very glad to be here in 2019 helping resolve that. I believe it was in 2016 or 17 that KPMG weighed in with a 100-plus page report, which listed all of these details and very clearly recommended the city get off of the system and replace it with a modern system that are used by all sorts of governments and private sector companies across the country.
Mm-hmm. And easy to update and to make
Yes.
changes to as required.
And it will give us, I think, some great capabilities. We're used to looking at it as just a payroll system. But I think that's underserving the city's most valuable asset, its people. A good system allows us to recruit better, allows us to develop our people, allows us to evaluate them, as well as allows us to pay them. And so payroll should not be, while payroll is a critical function, we would all argue, payroll is not the primary function of these systems. It's really about getting more out of your people and paying them accurately and in a timely manner. So I think that's something that we'll also be able to gain out of this, because PACER is a system that truly is about payroll, primarily with very little HR capabilities.
In an effort to spread out the cost of the program, what are the projected number of budget cycles anticipated as the program is implemented?
Certainly. So we received some funding for some of the initial stages. We're looking at around $20 to $26 million based on the vendor submissions, keeping in mind that we have not done any negotiations or tried to discount or work through any of those prices. We expect, depending on when the contract is finished, so this month we expect to have our scores in and to start to begin a contracting process. So we would expect this next fiscal year and the following fiscal year to be the two primary years in which we expect the expenditures. Of course, it's going to come down to exactly when the contract starts, and each of the different vendors had roughly a slightly different timeline. I'd say on average it's about 1 to 2 years is the typical timing of this. So it is a multi-year project that requires multi-year funding.
Okay, good. Well, I think it's an excellent start, Mr. Chairman. I certainly support the motion and look forward to your leadership as we move forward in this particular project.
Well, we thank you, and so we will note and file the ITOC report, and we'll instruct ITA to report to council on any proposed HRP system award, contract, and funding requirements for our consideration and approval.
Thank you. One last item that I'd like to add. We couldn't possibly do this without the great support of the city department. They've engaged very heavily in this. We've got them in the evaluation team. They've worked very closely on it. Whether they're a central department like personnel or controller, or they're rec and parks and others who use it, it's been absolutely a great partnership. I even enjoyed myself in those Tier 3 demos you mentioned that Controller Galpin himself visited and asked questions of the different vendors. So there's been, I think, a high level of engagement, and that gives us a lot of confidence in the project.
That's great. Well,
Good, thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Item number 4.
Item 4, continue from June 20th, 2018. Personnel Department report in response to adopted budget recommendation relative to the feasibility of creating an ordinance requiring successor contractors and their subcontractors to hire candidates from the targeted local hire program when and if a contract is terminated.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Cynthia Fletes. I'm with the Personnel Department, and joining me today is Vincent Cordero, also with the Personnel Department. As instructed by the Budget and Finance Committee, the Personnel Department worked with the City Attorney to explore the feasibility of an ordinance requiring successor contractors and their subcontractors to hire from the Targeted Local Hire Program when and if a contract is terminated and the city still wants to contract for the same job. In exploring the feasibility of such an ordinance, consideration must be given to the fact that successor contractors must already comply with 2 existing employment-related ordinances, which are the Worker Retention Ordinance and the First Source Hiring Ordinance. The Worker Retention Ordinance requires successor service contractors to retain employees of a terminated contractor, and the First Source Hiring Ordinance requires contractors and subcontractors to consider individuals referred by the Economic and Workforce Development Department for employment consideration. We would like to highlight that all TLH candidates go through a job readiness assessment conducted by the City Workforce Centers and other community-based organizations that are managed by EWDD. Therefore, it is highly possible that a significant number of individuals in the TLH candidate pool are already being referred by EWDD's approved organizations to contractors or subcontractors for employment opportunities available under city contracts. Additionally, since the Targeted Local Hire Program creates alternative job pathways for underserved communities that have traditionally faced employment barriers, the program does not collect or consider educational training or work experience requirements. Instead, individuals are randomly selected based on the job preferences indicated on their TLH program application. Therefore, if a city contractor requires specialized experience or certifications, it may not be feasible to directly refer individuals from the TLH candidate pool for city contractors. Nonetheless, the goal of the TLH program is to connect individuals from underserved communities to employment opportunities. Occasionally, the TLH program receives requests from community partners to distribute job announcements and information about job fairs to the TLH candidate pool. In these instances, employment opportunities are then emailed to the Targeted Local Hire candidate pool, and individuals in the pool have the option to respond directly to the non-city employer or community partner hosting the event if they are interested. These employment opportunities do not remove or limit a candidate's participation in the TLH program. The Personnel Department recommends that the TLH program continue to forward job opportunities and announcements available under city contracts to the TLH candidate pool when requested by EWDD. Information approved by EWDD can be communicated to the individuals in the TLH candidate pool, who would then respond directly to the successor contractor if interested.
So your ultimate conclusion is that the TLH program really isn't a good fit given the Worker Retention Ordinance and the First Source Hiring Ordinance in this circumstance.
Yes, that is correct.
And did we ever discuss this with the Coalition of City Unions? Were they part of the process as you were writing this report, or any conversations?
They weren't in the conversation with this discussion regarding the report, but we had considered this in the working group meetings in terms of being able to refer individuals outside of TLH. And again, since we don't collect any information regarding experience or education, it wouldn't be a good fit.
And is anybody here from the coalition that would like to speak on it? You're here but don't want to speak. Okay, fine. All right, Mr. Price, any? comments.
Thank you. Thanks for the report and for this effort. We know how important targeted local hiring is in terms of our overall strategy of improving our employment profile. So we just appreciate your leadership. But let me ask, is there a system in place that tracks the overlapping of individuals who are participants in the targeted local hire program that may be transferred, they may be referred to city contractors to the workforce centers? Or do we make those kinds of referrals? Is it possible to try to coordinate those activities at all?
So we would defer to EWDD since they manage the workforce centers and the referrals are being made out of the workforce centers.
Okay. Anybody from EWDD here? Okay, we'll ask that question later, Mr. Chairman. I have no other questions at this time. Again, thank you. I support this item, and I'm looking forward to even a more robust acceptance of targeted local hire by our departments. I think we have to set a standard, and we're just not there yet.
Thank you.
Right. We advocate for that wherever possible, where it makes sense. This may not be one of those times. So all that having been said, I will ask that we note and file the Personnel Department report without objection. And thank you for being here. Item number 5.
Item 5, continue from June 20th, 2018. LAPD and CAO reports in response to adopted budget recommendation relative to instructing the LAPD to report in regard to filling sworn and civilian positions in the LAPD. This matter has also been referred to the Public Safety and Budget and Finance Committees.
Welcome.
Good morning.
If you'd like to walk us through your report a little bit, that would be great.
The department report.
Back in June of 2018, the request from council was for the department to report in regards to filling our sworn and civilian positions within the police department. The report that was provided back in June detailed where we were at and where we were going, specifically in returning sworn redeployment. Currently, our focus has been on our public safety classifications, such as detention officers, PSRs, detention officers, PSRs, property officers, all of those safety classifications, security officers, as well as some of our analytical and auditor positions, because we knew filling those vacant authorities would allow for a direct one-for-one redeployment of our sworn officers. So thus far, we have filled all of those vacancies with the exception of 20 of our detention officers. We're in the process of filling those 20 authorities with a class that will be held at the end of April, which will return the remaining or the last of 13 sworn personnel or sworn police officers back to the field that are currently at the detention centers. So that has been the update since this last report.
So do we have a...
Excuse me, could you identify yourself for the record?
I apologize. Good afternoon, members. My name is Elena Asukan. I'm the Human Resources Director for the Los Angeles Police Department.
So do we have a number of how many folks were allowed to go back out into the field and were filled with civilians in those positions directly? Because I know in some cases we just had people go out in the field without looking at replacing them.
You know, sir, I do not have that. The department has redeployed over 550 sworn officers back into the field in direct relation to our civilianization efforts, as well as some other efficiencies that we have put into place to allow for that.
Yeah, it would be great if we knew how many were just replaced by civilians and how many positions just aren't filled in the civilian area and now are filled
I could
by
definitely
officers on
get
the
you
street.
that information.
Okay. Mr. Price, any questions?
No.
Comments? Well, I think this is definitely a good step in the right direction, so we appreciate it and hope we continue to see more movement in this direction. sounds like we're not too far off from being where we want to be in this regard. So, having said that, I'll ask that we note and file this report without objection.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Item number 6.
Item 6, communication from the mayor and CEO relative to, CEO report relative to fiscal year 2018 Urban Area Security Initiative Grant Award acceptance. This matter is also referred to the Public Safety Committee and the
And if you could just walk us
Sure.
through this. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Gabriela Hasso, and I'm the Director of Grants and Finance for the Mayor's Office of Public Safety. We're here today to ask this committee to grant us the authority to accept the UASI 18 Grant Award. UASI is the Urban Area Security Grant Initiative, and this is for fiscal year 18, which if acceptable, we would accept about $56 million with a grant performance period of September 1st, 2018 to May 31st, 2021. And this grant is an award that our office has received for over 10 years. And it's a grant that it's a public safety grant, and we fund all our city public safety departments, which is the fire department, police, and emergency management. And we also fund cities that are contiguous to the city of Los Angeles. We fund their public safety departments that have with projects, equipment, training, and exercise that have a nexus to terrorism. And this is a grant that we have traditionally accepted every year for the past 10 years. If there's something in particular you'd like to talk about, I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Has it always been for this amount, roughly?
Roughly this amount for several years. It's fluctuated. We've seen the same amount for maybe 5 years now. Yeah.
Has this always been focused exclusively on terrorism, or are there
Yes.
other elements to
It's
it?
always been focused on a terrorism nexus. So even the projects that we fund have to have that nexus.
Very good. Any other questions? Mr. Price? If not, we will approve the CAO's recommendations, and thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
And I don't believe we have any other business before us,
clears the desk.
so we are adjourned.